What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the 4-4 YouTube channel. Welcome back to another matchup video where I, Hutchinson Brown, deliver you a handful of matchups that I like and dislike for fantasy football this week. This is for week 7. Week 7 of fantasy football. We're already here. It's crazy, man. We're almost halfway through the season. Absolutely insane. One last thing before I get into the content. Please, ever since I've joined 4-4, I've been able to check out their website. And they've got some super cool stuff. I've gotten a premium subscription. They've got some super cool stuff on that website. If you, by any chance, want some of that premium content, go to 44.com/plans and use the secret code I'm giving you, YouTube, all caps YouTube, to get 25% off whatever subscription you pick. So go check it out, 44.com/plans. Use the code YouTube to get 25% off. All right, without further ado, let's get right into this video. I want to start with 2 rookies that I think could have breakouts this week. I'm talking about Jaxon Smith-Njigba and Jahmyr Gibbs, both first rounders. We'll start with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Last week, coming off the bye, he had a fantastic performance. Season highs in snaps, he had 72% of snaps, and receiving yards, 48 yards on the week. Now, those aren't mind-blowing numbers, but compared to what he had done in the first 2 weeks of the season, this is really impressive. And now this week, he gets a matchup with the Arizona Cardinals, who have allowed the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers. The Seattle Seahawks, too, have allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers. And when you look at quarterback numbers against these defenses, similar outcomes. This should be a high-scoring game with a lot of points going around the board. That means a lot of fantasy points are going around. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, a first-round rookie. They're going to want to get him involved post-bye week. They did it last week. I'm expecting this week to be that jump where it's like, okay, he is that dude. This might be the last chance you have to buy low in Jaxon Smith-Njigba, both in Dynasty and in a redraft. And looking at Jahmyr Gibbs this week, obviously, barring his health, he might not be healthy. He might be healthy. We shall see. As long as he gets in a full practice this week, he's healthy. He's good to go. His usage has been frustrating so far. It's been inconsistent. His passing work has been inconsistent. Sometimes he gets all the running work, but no passing work. Sometimes he gets passing work, but no running work. It's been really weird. He hasn't been used in the red zone at all. It's been all Dave Montgomery. And Jahmyr Gibbs hasn't scored a touchdown this week. But looking at the matchup this week, the Ravens, you might initially see them as a really tough fantasy matchup for running backs. The Ravens have allowed the 12th most rushing yards this year and the 8th most receiving yards to running backs, which is Jahmyr Gibbs' specialty, pass catching. You know, he loves to do that. He's really good at it too. The Ravens, the thing is, they've only allowed 1 rushing touchdown this year, and that was last week. And Jahmyr Gibbs, with all the receiving work he could get, he doesn't necessarily need a touchdown to be great for fantasy. I mean, he could get in the end zone this week. He's due for one. He hasn't had a touchdown yet this year. And if Dave Montgomery's gone, he's going to get at least some red zone work, more than what he would get when Dave Montgomery's in the lineup. So I expect Jahmyr Gibbs to have potentially a breakout week. I wouldn't be ranking him as an RB1. I wouldn't be locking him in your lineups. But if you really need your RB2 or a flex spot, Jahmyr Gibbs is somebody that I think is worth the play if he's playing and Montgomery is out. So now let's look at the Rams backfield. Let's look at another backfield here. Do not play any of these players. Don't play a Rams running back. Specifically, because I know people are going to fall for this trap, Zach Evans. Don't do it. Just don't. I don't want to mess with Zach Evans this week. He is one of the top waiver pickups of the week. People are desperate for running backs. I've seen people calling that he's going to get 15 plus opportunities this week. That's just not going to happen for Zach Evans. It's just not I just don't see it, because number one, in college, he was a big time recruit, and he went in there and got beat out by Kendre Miller, just straight up beat out at TCU by Kendre Miller. He had to move on to Ole Miss and had a solid career with Ole Miss. Then he gets drafted way later than people thought he would. Surprising? No, not to me, because when I watched his college film, I wasn't impressed. Thought that he was fine. And then he gets beat out, not just by Cam Akers, but by Kyron Williams and Ronnie Rivers. If he was actually good, he would have been able to beat out all those players and been able to get opportunities. He hasn't yet this year. I don't expect him to get opportunities this week, or at least a massive amount of them. Maybe he gets like 5 to 10, sure. But I'm expecting Darrell Henderson to lead this backfield. He's the most familiar with the team. He's the most familiar with the offense, and he's proven that he could be a good back before. But honestly, I wouldn't play any of these players. I think it's going to be a gross committee. So the next matchup, this is one I really, really like for this week. I mean, obviously, you're probably playing both these players no matter what. Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, specifically Jaylen Waddle, are going to eat. They're going to feast against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles have been bottom 5 in terms of fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position, especially as of late. They've been disastrous with all the injuries they've had on defense, in the secondary specifically. But I want to talk about Jaylen Waddle for a second, because after a really slow start this season, the last 2 weeks, he's really picked it up. He's been a top 20 wide receiver in each of the last 2 weeks. He's really picked up the fantasy production. The targets have been there, 19 targets each of the not each of the last 2 weeks. In the last 2 weeks combined, he saw 19 targets. And the Eagles secondary is not going to be able to stop this Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle duo. It's just not going to happen. So Tyreek Hill is obviously locked in your lineup. He's on pace for 2,303 receiving yards this season. He better be in your lineup. And Jaylen Waddle is a player you got to lock in your lineup as well. Another must lock in player for this week is Isiah Pacheco. Isiah Pacheco, I called him a big start last week. It worked out for me. But now Pacheco has 4 straight top 15 weeks, and he has seen at least 15 rush attempts in each of the last 4 weeks. And in total over the last 4 weeks, he has seen 13 targets. And specifically as well over the last 3 weeks, his snap shares have been at 60% range in each of those 3 weeks. The snaps have been there, the touches have been there, and the pass catching work has been there as well. He's turning into the workhorse back for this team. I mean, maybe not the workhorse back, but you know what I mean? The lead back for this team. He's the clear top dog in terms of the running back room in this offense, and he's just crushing it. And he's got to be started this week. They get the Chargers. This should be a high-scoring game, and the Chargers are pretty poor on defense overall. So, yeah, this is going to be a pretty nice matchup for Isiah Pacheco. And also on the Chiefs, another player I like to start, not Travis Kelce, not Patrick Mahomes. They're both great starts, but Rashee Rice as well. Rashee Rice over the last 2 weeks has been sneakily productive. 2 double-digit point games in PPR formats. He's had a touchdown. He's had a long play. This week against the Chargers, who have allowed the second most fantasy points to wide receivers, that could be an opportunity where Rashee Rice has a really good fantasy game. So if you really need a flex this week, if you really need someone desperate, if you're really desperate for somebody, Rashee Rice could really help you out. And the last matchup I want to talk about for this week, the last situation I want to talk about, do not start a Colt. Not a single one. I don't want to start a single Colt this week. That's right. I don't want to start Jonathan Taylor. I don't want to start Zach Moss. I don't want to start Michael Pittman. I don't want to start Gardner Minshew. Some situations you might be forced to. I understand. You just might. It just might happen. You might be forced to. But I don't want to see this game unfold in my fantasy football lineups. Absolutely not. This is a crazy stat, and I'm not exaggerating. The Browns this year, when you look at running backs and wide receivers combined against the Browns this season, remember it's been 6 weeks, they have allowed 4 players among running backs and wide receivers to go over 60 yards. 4. That's it. 4. That's it. They have been locked down on the defensive side of the football, and their offense has not been able to produce any points whatsoever. That is a terrible situation for fantasy football. And now with Anthony Richardson, now we have a quarterback in Gardner Minshew, who since we've seen him play over the last 2-3 years, in his opportunities playing, he's been horrific with the football in his hands. With the Eagles, he was terrible. I had to watch those games as an Eagles fan when Jalen Hurts went down. It was disastrous. And even last week, he had multiple turnovers. It was disastrous on offense for the Colts. I don't want to play a single Colt this week. And if you are playing one, you better be scared for your life because it's going to be a disaster on offense for them. But that's going to be it for this video today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please subscribe to the 44 YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter. I'm at HutchinsonB_FF. And remember, 44.com/plans. Use the code YouTube to get 25% off whatever subscription you choose on the 44 football website. There's plenty of fun content on there, so check it out. Good luck in your fantasy football matchups this week. I hope everything works out for you. We'll see you next week. I'll be doing a transactions video.